Lochlainn McKenna is a multi-award winning writer and director from Cork City, Ireland, and has directed music videos for bands such as Westlife and Keane. Now, his screenplay, Two for the Road, won the RTE Francis McManus short story competition before it was made into a short film with its original title, Guinness and Coke. Now, his short film, Two for the Road, is the story of a father and son enjoying their weekend together, despite the father, played by Steve Wall, letting the pub derail their time together. Now, set in 1990s Ireland, Two for the Road has qualified to be considered for a 2024 Academy Award after winning Best Drama Short at the Oscar-qualifying Galway Film Festival. So, ladies and gentlemen, let's welcome writer-director Lochlainn McKenna and his Oscar-qualifying short film, Two for the Road, to the show. Welcome, Lochlainn.
Thank you so much for having me on. Pleasure.
Yeah, well, I've got to say, I loved your short film, Two for the Road, and I was kind of wondering, is this based on a true story?
Yes, very much so, and it's been quite a cathartic experience, really, having made it. It started off as the short story during the pandemic. I guess I had the space to write. I'd always been good at writing, but never really allowed myself to write down any of these stories. And yeah, I'd had some very colourful adventures with my father as a kid, and this was just one of those stories that came out. And as you mentioned, I won the short story or was nominated for the short story competition, and from there, it kind of gave us the groundwork to make the film. But yeah, no, it comes from a very personal place.
Well, so with the lockdowns due to the pandemic, were you in the UK or you were in Ireland during that time?
I was in Ireland. Yeah, I was back home, my family home in the countryside. It was gorgeous. A lot of roaming around the fields and being in nature and avoiding the hustle and bustle of city life.
Well, so I guess that time of having to, as we all were, forced to slow down, so that gave you the time and the space and the thought process to sit down and write the screenplay?
Yeah, and I think 100%. And I think the other thing, which I always kind of I suppose I'm thankful for, is it gave me the space to redraft, which is something. It's one thing to write, but it's another thing to redraft. And I'd allowed myself the space and time to keep working on it and altering just small bits and pieces and draft by draft by draft. I was like, oh, this story's actually in a really nice place now. And in doing so, was able to, it just by happenstance, I saw this competition came up, and I was like, oh, I've got a story now that would fit that perfectly. And yeah, it fell into place organically, but it all came from having the space to write in the first place.
So the original title of the screenplay was actually Guinness and Coke.
And it came to me so quickly. It's so funny, like without any thought process at all. I just thought Guinness and Coke, and down to fairly obvious legal reasons, we couldn't call it Guinness and Coke, the film itself. I think it's one of those things. Maybe if we didn't have a funding body, or if we'd really really pushed, perhaps it could have happened. But you're battling with Coca-Cola and Diageo, so it's two major players would have been quite complex, especially with the nature of the film.
Well, I think the title Two for the Road fits this story perfectly. I love the film, and I love the fact that you created a film, a story of a father and son relationship. And, we all know that father-son stories can go in many different directions, but your story focuses from the perspective of Oscar, the son. Why did you choose that perspective?
Yeah, it's a great question, and it's actually very important and intrinsic to the whole thing, really. I suppose, well, the obvious answer is because it was based on my own childhood, is the first kind of thing. But also, with films like that, especially when you have characters that are struggling with alcoholism or whatnot, you get a lot of sort of, I always use the same reference, but when characters are drunk, you always get this sort of loose handheld sort of fever dream sort of effect of drunkenness. For me, it was really important that we're always seeing everything through Oscar's perspective. So when things are loose and fun for him, then we're handheld, we're long lens, we're moving with him. And then when things are stark and frightening and scary, or when his father is drunk with him, we're very static, we're very wide, we hold in the shot for a long time. And I think that there's an awful lot you can do with it from a child's perspective, in an adult world. So it's kind of trying to marry those two things together and give it the right lens. And the same thing went with the color palette. I never wanted it to be this sort of, the term misery porn. I always wanted it to be, colorful and bright. The weather didn't play ball in that sense, but we always wanted to feel fun because he's a 10-year-old, so it should never feel too heavy until it actually is heavy.
Well, I thought the weather was. I've been to Ireland, so it works. I mean, it can be, cloudy and rainy a lot of times, not really seeing the sunshine, probably a lot during the wintertime. And I love the
Oh,
fact that the story is so raw and so real because it wasn't just the father and son having a super happy weekend, but you showed happy moments. You showed some of the joyful moments. And then you showed the father, you actually revealed the father's demons. Why was that important?
I think it's funny. It's kind of a complex one. I think from my perspective, and I think what makes the film interesting is that I never wanted to vilify the father character. So we all have our own demons, but in the end of the day, he's doing his best. He's present. He's turning up. He's trying to make the weekends fun and adventurous, but he's got his own adult problems. And I think for him it's his alcoholism, but he's not a bad character. He's not a bad person. He's doing his best for his child, but unfortunately, with an adult gaze on that, we can see that it's not appropriate. It's not a safe environment. But we can only see that because we, the viewers, are adults that can watch it. But from Oscar's perspective, the young boy, yeah, of course, there's fear and there's jeopardy, but he's also happy to be with his father and he's enjoying their weekend together. So it's that sort of dichotomy that I think creates the conflict that is drawing audiences in and making people feel very conflicted because they have a lot of want to help Oscar for him to be taken out of the situation, but in the end of the day, he's with his father and he loves his father. So you have this sort of complex scenario.
Yeah, I also noticed that towards the ending of the film, that Oscar, even though there was a little bit of the conflict during the weekend, and it was mostly due to the father, having too much to drink at the pub, but the son showed a he went into a protective mode, so to speak, when it came to coming home and his father dropping him off at his mother's. So he never tells his mother of anything bad about the weekend. He just says, "Oh, he was basically acting like great weekend with dad. Everything's fine, nothing to worry about." Because if she found out that he was drunk, that whole relationship could change in an instant. So I love the fact that Oscar wanted to protect his father, and that was the love that the son had for him.
Yeah, exactly. And again, like all relationships, it's complex. And kids that come from sort of separated parents, there's a lot of being the mediator. There's a lot of keeping secrets. There's a lot of picking sides unbeknownst to yourself or whatnot. And I think in this case, or in my case as it was, I was sort of sworn to secrecy and I didn't know anything else really, because I really enjoyed my weekends with my father and they were very exciting and they were different from other kids and that was all it was colorful but it was wonderful and I was kind of willing to take the bad with the good and I think that it's the same in the film. Oscar's willing to kind of make that sacrifice because he doesn't want the weekends to stop and also doesn't want to cause conflict and strife between his parents, which I think is the common kind of scenario for people.
Yeah, and I thought that was really it was like this. And when people watch the film, you really have to kind of pay attention and look at it a little deeper to realize that Oscar has this love for both his parents. He wants to have a stable childhood as much as possible without rocking the boat and causing a problem. Now, I also noticed something in the film which maybe people outside of Ireland may not know, but because I've been to Ireland myself and talked to many people there and learned some things, and then I noticed something in your film. I noticed that the dialects were a bit difficult to determine what part of Ireland they came from. Was that done on purpose or by accident?
Very much on purpose. It's a bugbear of mine when you watch something and you can immediately define where it is. So yeah, no, it was important to me for a number of reasons, I guess. Like my my father moved around a lot. He traveled around, and his accent is very indistinguishable. I don't know if you can tell from my accent. I've got a very neutral Irish accent. So what I didn't want is for us, and we got very lucky in terms of the casting because Ewan has a very neutral accent. But what I didn't want is to find the most perfect child and for them to be from Mayo, and they've got a very thick Mayo accent, and then everyone's thinking, oh, okay, it's in Mayo, and immediately their brain is trying to go, oh, okay, I wonder what pub in Mayo that is, or what road in Mayo they shot that on, or whatever. By making it, I don't know, indistinct, then I think the viewer can kind of get more immersed in the story, and it doesn't become about the location. It probably is an Irish thing because I think Ireland's
Well,
so small
it's
and everyone knows the locations, but
and what I found really very interesting and cool about your film, and because of the dialects, a lot of people in America, they think, oh yeah, the Irish have this one accent. They think Germans have one, the British have one, Australians have one. But just like in America, you can know if somebody was raised in New York or New Jersey or California or Texas. And so you pick up knowing where they're from. But in other foreign
I'm very
countries,
impressed.
yeah. And in the foreign countries, it's the same way. And when I was in Ireland, I had someone tell me, they said, oh, yeah, so and so's from this region. And I'm like, how do you know that? And it didn't dawn on me that there are different levels of dialects in Ireland, just like they are in America. And like you said, there are areas of Ireland that when they speak, the accent is so strong, you almost have a hard time trying to figure out what they're saying.
Exactly. I think that's very well observed of you. In fairness, fair play. But no, it's very true. It's very true. Ireland, for such a tiny country, has so many different dialects, even from town to town. The accent can change massively. So, where we were shooting as well in West Cork, it had a very, very strong accent there, very much so. And in fact, Ewan Morris, who plays Oscar, is from Tralee, also an area with a very strong accent, Kerry people. But his father's from Scotland, so it neutralised. In the same way, my accent is neutralised, so it just worked out very, very fortuitously, really.
Yeah, and I think it, like you said, it makes the film very neutral, so that way the audience pays attention to the actual story and not focusing on a particular dialect. Now, how was what was the casting process like when you were looking for the characters of Oscar and Hugh?
Yeah, very, very interesting, as you can imagine. I'm not sure if you're familiar with the term swallowing the frog. Do you know that term? Yeah, but swallowing the frog basically means that you do the hardest task first. And I think for me, I didn't swallow the frog because I left it, kept pushing it down the road because it was such a personal thing for me that I was struggling with it a bit. I wanted to really get it right. Not just for myself, but I guess also I wanted to do right by my father or my mother, and such an odd thing to do anyway. And I guess it never really mattered to me about the likeness. I never really wanted anyone to look like me or my dad, but it was important to me that we got the right actor and that the father and son would have the right rapport, obviously, and feed off each other well, and that they would have a likeness of each other. So I really I struck gold with Ewan. Ewan is phenomenal. He's I miss him. I actually miss being on set with him. He'd never acted before, never been to an audition before in person. It was his first ever job, and he just like lit up the room. He was just so fervent and energetic and offered so much. And by day three, he was a bit like, oh, and like if I have my bag in my left hand in scene 17, then I should have it in my left hand going to scene 18, shouldn't I? And do you want my eye to be on that to be in the C stand there? And like just constantly aware and offering so much. And he'd ask me questions as well, like um, obviously when you were traveling around Ireland in the 90s, you wouldn't have had a phone. So when you were looking out the window, like what would you have been thinking about when you were driving around? And these sort of things, like really trying to get into like not just his own character, but the character of or what I would have experienced as well, and Steve is a very experienced actor, and I think that he really helped Ewan as well, sort of mentored him, and they worked as like this brilliant duo together. We did a rehearsal day in Dublin together, and we played pool, and myself and Steve and Ewan and his mother. sat down and just explained to him how a set worked. We had to explain all of how takes worked, and everything, every single element of the filmmaking process, because it was his first time and he absolutely smashed it.
So did you have both characters spend time together so that way they would end up, having a better synergy on camera, so and not just coming in onto the set cold, so to speak?
Yeah, exactly. I wanted them to spend as much time as possible together beforehand. Now, obviously, with schedules and money and et cetera, I wasn't able to do as much as I wanted. But no, we had that day in Dublin, and we played pool and brought them to Steve. Steve's a musician as well. He's the lead singer in a very famous Irish band called The Stunning. So we went to Steve's studio, which I think was good, lovely experience for me, but also for you. And I'm a big fan of The Stunning, so it was nice to see his studio. But just we rehearsed some of the physical action as well. He carries him into the house at the end, and just wanted to make sure that we. I suppose it was sort of like an intimacy workshop in one sense, I guess, making sure that they were okay with touch. In the presence of his mother, and because as father and son, obviously there has to be kind of a closeness in terms of the physicality as well as the emotional sense. So yeah, working through all those things as well as the script.
Well, I've got to ask you because I was doing a little bit of research. Did you really film with 16 millimeter Kodak film?
You better believe it. Yeah.
Was that film hard to find?
No, not at all. No, no. There's no lab in Ireland, but there's a couple of labs in London. And I live in London, and I'd shot my previous short film was shot in 16 mil as well, boxed up, but that was a one shot, so it was a little simpler. Um, we did. It's funny. I was pretty unwavering. I kind of knew from the outset it had to be shot in film, and I suppose the logic behind that was that. I wanted it to feel like a 90s memory. Wanted it in terms of the texture, the feeling. Owen McLaughlin, my DOP, and I had gone through a lot of old photographs I had of myself and my dad. I really wanted to emulate that look. So, they were all shot in 35 mil, obviously just like, point and shoot cameras.
A lot of people
So,
don't realize that the 1990s, we don't even think of filming of a piece based in the 1990s as a period film. But in a
mm,
way, it really is. But if you filmed it with a digital camera, it wouldn't have that true feel of its time period. And so by
yeah,
using true film, which I think film is the best. I mean, how many feet of film did you use?
yeah, it's funny. I'm probably jumping the gun a bit. I should probably explain a bit better. So yeah, we bought 12 rolls of film, I believe, and we shot 11. There's 400 feet in each roll. Now, and you get about 10 minutes of footage per roll. So do you know what though? For this particular project, it actually married perfectly because Ewan is 13 playing 10, but he can only be on set for so many hours, and we also only had so much film, so we could only do so many takes anyway. So it just meant that, in terms of the process of working with them, I would just, do enough rehearsals that we were happy. We'd shoot a take or two and then move on. Now, thankfully, Ewan was brilliant because if he wasn't, it would have been a disaster. But it all worked perfectly in that sense. And like the benefit of it in terms of
You
the look is astronomical, really.
What I love is you have the challenge of using real film. And it's not like using a digital camera where like, oh, you could do 30 takes and just delete it and keep going, and which can be cost effective because you're not buying film, but you don't have that true look. So it's funny, Lachlan, just this season alone, I have seen short films from 8 millimeter. Yours was a 16 millimeter, and then there was one that was a 35 millimeter. And there's just that look you just can't replicate with digital. Even if you took it into post and added all the overlays, you still don't have that true sense of film. And I just think that just, like you said, it adds to the overall story.
Yeah, 100%. And I would never go back if I could help it. I once heard someone describe it really, really well. It was someone who works in CineLab in London. It was a workshop during the pandemic, but they described. I hope I'm getting this right. But they said that if you were to film something and there was a dark patch and you were shooting digitally, the black is flat basically. But on film, it moves because the grain moves and there's a texture, and the brain is automatically alert to shadows that move. So we're constantly on edge. Not on edge, but like aware. Your brain is constantly awake and constantly aware when you're watching film because the shadows move.
Wow, that means that if you ever wanted to film a suspense thriller, then
Oh,
you'd
big
want to
time.
use film because, like you said, then the blacks have that tendency to move, and then our own eyes and our brains will actually register that automatically. Wow,
Without even realizing. Yeah.
I never knew that. That
Oh, but it's
that is
true.
a that that is a really cool thing to learn and to understand. Um, and the other thing that I love about you using real film is that it increases the challenge. Like you said, you only have so much time, so much film, so you have to focus on the story, you have to focus on the shot, and you have to keep the retakes down to a bare minimum. So, in essence, you're creating a really true short story.
Exactly. It's discipline, and I do wonder. I've been kind of pondering this. When you do, or when one does start making bigger films, and if you do want to shoot in 35 or 65, do they just have an endless supply? Does that discipline go out the window? Not an endless supply, but is there a case for just being like, we can, like, you know, can your Chris Nolan's whatever, can they shoot 50 takes of something if they want? Because I don't know. I'm curious because obviously when you're at, say where we are with this sort of budget on a short film like this, you have to be disciplined. But I don't know if that changes or goes out the window. Maybe you can
Well,
ask one of your guests
well,
next time and let me know.
I learned this last week. In the film Mrs. Doubtfire with Robin Williams, they still have 2 million feet of film of his outtakes alone.
Oh my God!
And so now
Wow,
they're
that's
looking
crazy.
at the film thinking, can we create, which I'm sure they can, if you have 2 million feet of film, to create a documentary based on
Oh
all of his
wow,
ad libbing in that film? I'm like, I'm trying to fathom. And here you are at 400 feet per roll, so you have 12 rolls. So you're looking at
4,000
like
to cover.
just a hair under 5,000 feet, and they have 2 million.
That's unfathomable for me. That's crazy.
Well, what kind of camera did you use?
We shot in a Arri SR2. There's two amazing guys. I'm sure they'll appreciate the shout out. Ronan Nissenbaum and JP Quill, and they are Ireland's film nerds. So everything shot in film goes through them. Basically, they just live and breathe it, and they constantly go to the Kodak labs. They know the Kodak people. They're made of film, essentially. So having them on board was yeah, it was kind of the only way to do it, really.
Well, did you set up any shots or test shots using digital before you actually turned a film camera on?
No, but I mean, saying that, on the recce's, we took a lot of photographs on our phones, and I sort of built a storyboard based on those recce mock-ups. So the storyboard was built out of digital photographs, I suppose, from my phone. But we kind of just worked off that and the script, and I can see, like, I can see the monitor, so I was able to frame up um, as I needed to or wanted to. But yeah.
Well, how long did it take you to go from screenplay to a finished film?
Do you know, it's funny? I work in commercials a lot, so I was quite adamant to kind of sort of do the post like we would a commercial. Kind of work out a schedule. In fairness, and credit to my producers too for kind of facilitating that. Granny Dwyer and Natalie Britton. But we shot in March, and the whole thing was done in June. Yeah, finished in June. So there was a little bit of a delay. I was kind of holding out to get the editor I wanted, Dan Sherwin. Guy Ritchie had nicked him from me, so I had to wait for Guy Ritchie to release him, and then we got him. But yeah, he's amazing, really, really brilliant editor, Dan. It's funny. It's one of the elements that I'm most happy with. I'm sure there's obviously thousands of brilliant editors in the world, but every time I watch it back, I'm just like, there's so many brilliant editorial decisions that came from him, that have really accentuated the film in a way that I suppose I wasn't expecting before I saw the first rough cut.
Well, I loved the story from beginning to end flows seamlessly. The cinematography as part of the storytelling, it flows seamlessly, and the audience knows exactly what is going on with this story. I mean, for you, what has been the audience's response to this film?
Yeah, it's been overwhelmingly positive, I would say, to be honest. And when we had our premiere in Galway, I thought that I was prepared for the premiere. I suppose emotionally, I thought I was prepared, and we were the 10th film of a 10 film program. So I was kind of sitting there waiting through 9 films. I think we had 70 people there altogether between friends, family, and my grandmother was there, and my brother and sister were there, and all these sort of things. And I suppose the longer I waited and was letting this fester, the more emotion was coming up in me. And the first frame of the film came on, and I just burst out crying. I was just in bits, and was hyperventilating and whatnot. But the reason I say that is because, you know, I left the cinema and was met by so many other people that were crying and they couldn't speak, and we were kind of hugging each other, and a combination of strangers and people I knew. And I suppose it was so visceral to see their reaction, combined with my own reaction. I was like, okay, this is like, it sounds a bit kind of maybe, twee to say it, but it did sort of solidify the fact for me that I wanted to be a filmmaker, or to make films like that. Furthermore, because it was like, if you can get this sort of reaction, it's so rare as a filmmaker that you get to experience that reaction firsthand, like so soon after having screened the film. So yeah, to have that reaction from people
Well,
was a really
do you have
special
any?
experience.
Yeah, do you have any plans for Two for the Road to be a full feature?
That is the plan. Yeah. So the plan is, at the minute, I am writing it. I'm writing a book basically, which will be 10 stories long. Well, it might be more, might be less. And the sort of plan in my head is that there'll be 10, a story for every weekend, different weekends of my dad, basically, across what I think would be 10 years, from 5 to 15. And yeah, there'd be kind of a variance, some darker than others, some brighter than others. And that I'm kind of expecting that book then to be the basis for the screenplay and the feature. And I think we'll kind of follow. I hope to follow the Whiplash model of using Two for the Road to sort of fund the feature, as well as sort of a proof of concept.
Well, how does it feel to be Oscar qualified?
Surreal, exciting. Yeah, as you know, I'm sure, voting starts tomorrow, so it's exciting. I always said I didn't really care if we didn't get it, as long as we kind of left every stone unturned and did our best for the film. So we're here. I wouldn't change anything about the film. I'm very proud of the film. Very proud of the team and everything that's been put into it. So if it goes one step further, brilliant. If it doesn't, then we'll go back to the festival circuit. We've only just started our festival circuit, so it's very early doors for us, really. So the whole, at least another year of the festival to go, and yeah, we'll see. We'll see.
Well, so what projects do you have planned for 2024?
Good question. I am trying to get some funding for a documentary. It's sort of I speak Irish as well, so it's a bilingual sports documentary in Ireland, which I suppose I probably can't say much about because I haven't received funding yet. But that's looking positive. And then yeah, beyond that, it'll just be there's commercials, there's kind of short docs. There's always so much to do and so much to get stuck into.
Well, I will say this, ladies and gentlemen, Two for the Road is an excellent short film, and it deserves to be Oscar qualified. Great storytelling, cinematography coming from the real use of Kodak film, which just adds to the realism to this father-son adventure story. And Lochlainn, thank you so much for sharing your film with us. Sharing your film with us
Thank,
today.
thank you so much. I really, really appreciate it. Thanks for having me on. And fingers crossed, you'll see more of us in the coming weeks.
I know that the short list is going to be announced here in the next coming week or so. So I know everybody's on pins and needles. But Two for the Road will always be associated with the words Oscar qualified.
True, true. Well, maybe we'll come back on. We can have another chat at shortlist stage of nomination, maybe.
Hey, I will.
Be lovely
Hey,
to see you.
well, the door is open, and I know that with the short list and even a nomination, definitely you got to come back, and we can talk more about this incredible film. And ladies and gentlemen, like I said, you've got to check out when you have the chance to see Two for the Road. It's excellent storytelling at its best. The
I should,
real
I should
use of
say,
film. Yeah, go ahead, Lachlan.
I should say on that point, it's on Omeletto at the minute for a very limited time only. just with the lead up to the vote. So if anyone wants to check it out, it's on Omelette, if I'm allowed to say
Yes,
that.
and that is the place for many, many short films, ladies and gentlemen. So check that out as well. And again, you can't beat watching a film that was filmed on film instead of going the digital age. He brought the true realism of the 1990s Ireland to us all. You're going to love this story, love this film. It's one of my favorites of the year. And again, ladies and gentlemen, I want to thank you for watching and listening. Remember, filmmaking is an art, and on Bondon Cinema, and also film directors just like Lochlainn McKenna is keeping that creative art alive. And as for me, I hope to see you at the movies.